The rhythm of healing, the Octaves method. O is for observation, through stillness we find meditation and breath work that quiet the mind. In silence we listen, the answers are clear, awareness emerges, dissolving the fear. C is for compassion, for self and for all, embracing the good, the struggles, the fall. With kindness we grow, we nurture, we mend, learning to love ourselves as we extend. T is for therapy, a path we explore. Daily we practice unlocking the door. From journaling to mindfulness, healing begins. Each step is a victory as peace settles in. A is for animals and laughter so bright, like children at a play, their joy taking flight. With playfulness and movement, we rediscover the way to heal through the fun that we often delay. V is for victuals, nourishing and pure, detoxifying the body and keeping us sure. We choose what we eat with intention and grace, fueling our journey at our own pace. E is for exercise, where movement is free. We stretch and we bend in sweet harmony. Flexibility grows with choices we make. In strength and in stillness, our bodies awake. S is for socialize, where self-growth begins. Others reflect our triggers and the places within. Through relationships, our true selves we find, growing and healing with each tie that binds. The Octaves method, where all behavior makes sense. We just need to find the sense it presents. We just need to find the sense it presents. We just need to find the sense it presents.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 5 of the Trauma and Social Work Podcast. I am KJ Alexander here with my co-host, Tonya Octave, and today we have a lot of important information to dive into. But before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and let Tonya tell a little bit more about herself and what this podcast is about.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tonya Octave, and we are going into Season 5 of Trauma and Social Work Podcasts, where we will be discussing and diving deep into my book called Heal the Mind, 7 Strategies Towards Mental Wellness, Happiness, and Success, Exploring Trauma, Mental Wellness, and Ways to Live a More Balanced Life. And before we begin, just a simple reminder that this podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not intended for medical, psychological, mental health, or legal advice. Although I'm a licensed professional, this is not a formal type of treatment. We may talk about things like hypnosis and meditation and things that we would do in a therapeutic, from a therapeutic perspective, but it's not a form of treatment. For individual questions about your wellness, your happiness, and your success, please seek out a professional. And if you are experiencing a mental health crisis, do call 911 or go to your nearest emergency room.
Great, awesome. That was amazing. So with that being said, I want to make sure I tell the audience, if you haven't already, follow this page on Spotify, YouTube, and any other platforms we post episodes on. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any upcoming episodes in the future. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so picking up where we left off, we're going to continue our discussion of the Heal Thy Mind book, and we're focusing on the section that has to deal with psychodynamic theory. So, Tonya, I wanted to ask you, in your professional opinion, how does psychodynamic therapy work, and what can someone expect from this process if this is what they choose to go through?
And I think that's a good way to kind of talk about psychodynamic therapy, as it really is one of the more longer standing treatment modalities historically. And then new modalities have come over, like we've talked about with play therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy. And then there's even newer modalities that are used out there, like things you might hear things like EMDR. Like, so you might hear other types of language. So, one of the things that I would say in terms of the listening audience is when you're looking for a provider, that would be one of the questions to ask them. What is your treatment modality, and how is that treatment modality used in terms of your work with clients? So when we're talking about psychodynamic therapy, you want someone, so most clinicians are going to be master level educated. And in order to practice, you have to be licensed. So beyond the master's level, you get a certain amount of hours that says that you have this, you're developing this type of expertise. Then you also study for a licensing exam, and each state is different. But from that exam, when you pass it, then you're licensed to practice or work with an individual in a therapeutic setting. It also really kind of affords you room, if you want to work with insurances, to be able to bill with insurances. So that would be the first part, like thinking about what would be a good modality for you. And then as you interview someone that you think may be potential that you want to work with, those are the questions that come up. Specifically, for psychodynamic therapy, I think of, in terms of my education beyond master's level, is I went into a doctorate training program on clinical social work, one of the few in the nation. And what it allowed me to do in terms of social work, in your undergraduate and in your master's level degree, you are broad in terms of what you can work with. So you can work with adoptions, you can work in case management, you can work in an administrative, which we consider macro social work. You can work more in grassroots, individual things like that, with people, and that might be more micro work. But rarely in the master's program, unless you're in a clinical kind of master setting, do you get that clinical training? So I recognized that that is what I needed as I wanted to continue to build this career. And so I went and got additional training and a doctorate level courses in terms of clinical social work. And particularly with psychodynamic, you can even extend that to doing more psychoanalysis, which is the most intensive form of treatment, often daily. 5 to 7 times you go for psychoanalysis to really get that depth of understanding. Psychodynamic has a little bit more flexibility. And although most practitioners will see an individual once a week, ideally, the frame gives you the option to go to 3 to 5 times a week. And so formalized training is going to be important, but then you're also going to kind of think about what other additional kind of requirements. There's something that we call CEUs, and that's our continuing education units. And every year we have to get a certain amount, and we send them to our governing boards in terms of like regulating them if requested. And so you might even ask, what are some of the current CEUs that you're taking, or specializations that you've taken that kind of relate to psychodynamic frames? So that's probably what I would say in terms of practice and looking for someone. The education will probably be there, but I would probably encourage people to tease out a little bit more in terms of the frame and what the therapists, how they describe it, and what kind of their experiences has been.
Okay, yeah, for sure. And I'm curious, what is your specific training and experience in psychodynamic therapy, if you don't mind sharing?
So the social work part up into master's level, and then I have the clinical social work certificate at a doctorate level, and I have a variety of other trainings. There's psychodynamic play, so there's certifications and certain requirements that you have to keep up annually in order to keep that certification. There are other modalities that can be added to that, like trauma sensitive yoga from a psychodynamic perspective. And so it is your 4 years of your bachelor's, your 2 years of your master's, and 2 to 4 years of any type of doctorate training beyond that.
All right. Definitely appreciate that background. And you have a lot of experience with this for sure. And I wonder if I could read this section of the book with the audience. So, helping clients understand new perspectives is also the goal of psychodynamic theory, the broader category of relational therapy. We all struggle with feeling that we are disconnected from others in life. Psychological challenges occur when disconnections arise in our relationships. Our earliest relationships in life are with parents slash caregivers. These relationships are the foundation for all our future relationships. When a child is born, attachments are formed to people and objects. Attachment is a reciprocal relationship between adult and child. If we were secure in our relationship with our primary caregiver, i.e., if they were attentive to our needs, understood us when we cried, welcomed us, and celebrated as we came into the world, then we will be similarly secure in our future relationships. Those who are secure are close with their parents and have no separation anxiety, but they are also confident and can regulate boundaries. As an adult, one is comfortable around other people and alone and behaves in a loving and supportive way. And I think that is a great way to frame that and very well written. Um, it continues to go on. Uh, the same principles applies if we were unwanted or felt unloved. Our relationships in the future will be a series of reactions and triggers that arise in us. If a child has a parent who is depressed or a workaholic, then the child will not seek closeness in relationships and may withdraw. Hard to console, the child may throw temper tantrums and experience separation anxiety. As they grow into adults, they may be emotionally unavailable, i.e., unable to express emotions and repeating patterns passed on by their parents. An adult who experienced a lack of love in childhood may fear abandonment and suffer intense anxiety, exhibiting clingy behavior and mood swings. So I think that section right there really shows both sides and shows an example of how, a child's upbringing can definitely have a huge effect on who they turn out to be as an adult. And then I just wanted to share the last section of this where it says therapy brings what is hidden from the individual into consciousness, awareness, giving opportunities for the patient to reflect on what they feel, think, and want to do about the pattern. Awareness can bring about change, moving subconscious materials into conscious awareness. And I think that was the perfect way to summarize that because it seems to me as if this is all about getting the patient to bring something forth in their subconscious mind. Maybe they couldn't come to a certain conclusion on their own, but with just a little help from an outside source, they're able to kind of unlock these certain aspects of their subconscious and use the information to start beginning their healing journey. So I wonder if you can kind of speak on that.
The idea in terms of like the subconscious mind or the connection with, let me back up. So the
Okay.
first part of the introduction to psychodynamic has many components. And so even if I talk about psychodynamic therapy, let me set a little frame first. This isn't necessarily a treatment modality where there's a quick fix for relief. This is about long-term personal growth. So it's not like here, these are, how long will it take me to find the love of my life? that's not going to happen in 10 sessions. How long will it take me to understand how I showed up in this relationship? You might get some insight within 10 sessions. So, like, there's this short part of I want relief from immediate kind of pain or suffering or some type of symptom presentation. Psychodynamic therapy is a long term personal growth, me trying to figure out me. So there's that self awareness of my emotional triggers, having healthier relationship patterns, the ability to even sit with some emotions rather than disassociate or avoid, which is what we kind of do in terms of how we operate in the world. So when you even think about psychodynamic, in the back of your mind, you're thinking, this is what I want. I want to figure out me. I want to understand how I am in experience with relationships. I want to work on the uncomfortability of emotions like loneliness. Um, Loneliness can be perceived in a negative way, like, oh, poor me, I'm lonely, I have nothing to do. Loneliness can be perceived as an abundance to now connect with the spirit without distractions, right? And so, like, how can you, if you're at that space that is the that you want insight, and now maybe you're a little bit more drawn into some of this unconscious stuff, then psychodynamic therapy would be for you. So, like, that would be the frame in thinking, like, what approach might be good for me if those things draw you, if it triggers something in you and you say, like, I'm curious, then that may be the approach for you. Know that although there is a way to practice psychodynamic with short sessions, maybe a year. So when I say short-term therapy, when I say short-term therapy with psychodynamic, that's a year. Um, Long-term therapy goes on for years because in this organic way you are exchanging life with someone else, and I can talk a little bit about that in terms of the clinical setting. But it's kind of like going through the process with someone else, but someone who is trained to kind of monitor, to shift, to notice ideas that may come up. And when I think about the tools that are used for psychodynamic, one of the biggest tools is like dream analysis. And dream analysis really can help you understand these hidden fears, these desires, these unresolved conflicts. I think it was Freud who called in one of his dreams the royal road to the unconscious, right? Like when you think about royal, you think of like royalty, right? Like, so psychodynamic is the higher end of stuff in terms of material in your unconscious. I'm trying to explain in a way without that you can relate to it in a symbolic way for people to understand. Then there's things like transference and countertransference, right? Things may come up. If I were working with you, KJ, things will come up for you that you may feel some way about it. And those can be unconscious transference feelings. An example that may show up is if you struggle in relationships with women, you might be more likely to want to have a female therapist. And then you might notice anger showing up as a way to safely project that onto another person. And in that therapeutic relationship, I'm going to bring that up in a compassionate and loving way, but I'm going to bring it up when appropriate, in terms of how it's manifested in the clinical setting. Then there's countertransference. So then there are my stuff that comes up. And I really appreciate this, one, because I feel things in my body and I'm also having other kind of experiences. And some of them may fit for you or the client and be relatable. And then some things may not fit at the time that they're discussed. So things that I may notice is, I noticed that you were talking about eating pizza for dinner last night with your male friends, and um, you started to have a body posture that was a little bit more aggressive. What do you think that's about, right? Or I may start to feel the countertransference is me starting to feel scared in your presence. So my body, my heart may beat fast. I may have to take a couple of breaths, and I may say to myself, "Ooh, I noticed that I'm having a little bit of anger showing up." And so we use the countertransference and the transference material, like this really unresolved emotional material, through the relational exchange to help bring things that are unknown in the unconscious mind into conscious awareness. And then there's things like interpretation and insight and making associations. And even with that, those things will stick. Some of those things will not. The other person will come up with things. And that also kind of supports it. I've talked about defense mechanisms a lot, the way that emotional expression. When I wrote this section in the book, I can't write, this wasn't a book about psychodynamic therapy.
Right.
This was a short book, a short section in a book that can help anyone give common knowledge. And so the podcast is designed to give a little bit more depth to the book, to help with this transition of a wellness plan. And when I talk about attachment, there are two things that usually come up with psychodynamic therapy if you choose to work with me, and how I understand the mind, and the interaction and the exchange of energy between the three. You, me, and the exchange is the third. That is attachment. And so the first part talked about attachment and when attachment is formed. And attachment is formed at birth. And so there are 4 different types of attachment styles, and I don't really go into the book in terms of describing that. But what I do talk about is, or at least hint to, when you're born, all you really have to understand is that you need a healthy adult that is good enough.
Yeah.
And hopefully that gives some relief in the mind of parents, because parents reflect in times that I'm not good enough, I'm not doing enough. And how I explain this is, as a parent, you could possibly be the best parent. What is important is, does the infant feel that you're good enough? And we are really talking in a unconscious and a subconscious way, meaning when the infant has, I'll give you some real kind of practical examples. When the infant is on breast milk and the infant feels that after consuming the breast milk, there is a soothing, a relaxation, a sense of comfort in the body. Think about when you have had the most amazing salad with kale and peppers and lots of colorful things and things that were healing to the body. And when you ate that, you felt energy, like you felt good, you felt clarity in a thought. That is what is experienced in the body of the infant. And this is based on attachment theory, so I just wanted to reference that. Then you ate pizza with pepperoni and spices, and there was this agitation in the gut, like, oh God, I'm sick. You want to go to sleep. You got to sleep off all those carbs. You have maybe brain fog. So all these other symptoms start to arise. Well, the same will arise for the infant after consuming that milk. And if the breast milk is soothing, happy infant. If the breast milk is agitating, not a happy infant, because there's going to be agitation in the body. And so then the infant will start to make the association. This milk, brings this bad sensation. And so you could be doing everything external as a parent, thinking that we're working on secure attachment. But if you're breastfeeding, you really have to be mindful of the food that you're giving the infant, because that is going to be an unconscious manifestation of attachment that really starts so early on in the relationship. And it's about trust. Can the infant trust that whatever's given by the adult is going to be given in a way that is perceived pleasurable? And Freud talks about kind of like this in terms of like a pleasure principle and stuff like that, but not getting into the dynamics of that. So I wanted to just talk about like why I brought up attachment, because it happened so early and it is connected to these unconscious representations. Attachment is your first love in this life was your caregiver. If that was your mom, your dad, your uncle, your grandmother, your nana, your papa, your neighbor, your foster parent, whoever that was. Maybe it was even a doctor. Maybe you were in the hospital because you had to stay in the hospital because of a premature birth. Whatever that first caregiver is, that was your first love. And especially starts to form within the first 3 years of life and development, based on some theories of developmental psychology. That being said, if you develop a secure relationship, a secure attachment there, then you mimic that in your other relationships. You then can become secure attachments for others. You then tend to be more satisfied with relationships. So you fall in love and you can have passion, love, but if the relationship ends, it can be consuming for a while, but it's not consuming for a lifetime. And then when people have other attachments, anxious attachments, avoidant attachments because there was abuse or neglect early on in life, right? You will then mimic those patterns, and then you will start to see the challenges in relationships as an adult. And so I mentioned attachment theory and psychodynamic because I combined the two, and I also combined trauma, but I just didn't talk about trauma as much in that section. So that talks a little bit in terms of attachment theory. There's also another, did you have any questions or thoughts about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, definitely a lot to break down and digest. But it just seems like to me this is something that highlights that humans are creatures of habit and we learn behavior from the people around us in our environment. But you did mention a lot of different ways someone can know if this is the right therapy for them. But are there any other ways you can think of how a person can kind of figure out if this is right for them, and what can they expect from this process?
Cost.
Okay.
Long-term psychodynamic treatment is an investment in yourself. And so I always tell people that this is an investment, and are you willing to invest in this type of growth? Most people will say yes, and then I'll say, well, are we talking financial investments?
Yeah.
Right? Because it's more than just showing up. This is the depth of what self-care is. And even with the concept of self-care, if you ask people, what do they do for self-care? Most people are going to tell you things external. I go to the barber. I get a facial. I go somewhere and somebody does something to my body that makes me have pleasurable sensations. And they identify that as self-care. Some people may say, I like to read. I spend time alone. I go to the park. I stay grounded. Those are the other options of self-care. So when you think about self-care, if you go beyond maybe the external, what better gift to give yourself than the experience yourself in a professional relationship with someone else who has a different type of insight that they can bring. And hopefully the person that you're working with has a secure attachment. It might be a little difficult if you chose to work with a therapist and they're anxious avoidant. That might bring up some stuff for you. So that's why I say kind of ask some of those questions and be clear. But cost is usually one of the factors that cost and time are the two primary factors that should be considered. This is a commitment. This is a financial commitment, and this is a weekly commitment. This isn't like, I guess I'm just going to show up for 50 minutes and try to get to know myself. You've been living on this planet many, many years, and I believe many, if I want to talk about unconscious stuff, I'm going to get into past lives, and I'm going to say many, many lives you've lived in this world. Yeah, sure. Maybe we haven't got it right because we keep coming back. Like, are we even exploring that? This is an investment in you. And so that would be when you're at a place where you feel that you can invest in the time, when you feel that you can back it up with the financial investment, then this is a modality for you. And those are usually the two things to consider.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely imagine, trying to pay for this therapy for years can get definitely can definitely start to add up over the course of time. But it's like you said, I don't think there's any better investment that people can make. And you see people spend money on a bunch of nonsensical things all the time. So I feel like it definitely is something that will be worth it, because health is wealth, and not just physical health, but also mental health as well.
Wraps up another episode. I hope today's discussion provided clarity and tools you can use in your daily life. If you're ready to take the next step in the healing journey, I'd love to connect. Head over to my website to schedule a free 15-minute consultation. It is a great opportunity to ask questions and see how we can work together. And while you're there, download my complimentary workbook designed to help you reflect, grow, and move towards mental wellness, happiness, and success. Thanks for listening, and I will see you next time. The Rhythm of Healing, the Octaves Method. O is for observation, through stillness we find meditation and breath work that quiet the mind. In silence we listen, the answers are clear, awareness emerges, dissolving the fear. C is for compassion, for self and for all, embracing the good, the struggles, the fall. With kindness we grow, we nurture, we mend, learning to love ourselves as we extend. T is for therapy, a path we explore. Daily we practice unlocking the door. From journaling to mindfulness, healing begins. Each step is a victory as peace settles in. A is for animals and laughter so bright, like children at play, their joy taking flight. With playfulness and movement, we rediscover the way to heal through the fun that we often delay. V is for victuals, nourishing and pure, detoxifying the body and keeping us sure. We choose what we eat with intention and grace, fueling our journey at our own pace. E is for exercise, where movement is free. We stretch and we bend in sweet harmony. Flexibility grows with choices we make, in strength and in stillness our bodies awake. S is for socialize, where self-growth begins. Others reflect our triggers and the places within. Through relationships, our true selves we find, growing and healing with each tie that binds. The Octaves Method, where all behavior makes sense. We just need to find the sense it presents. We just need to find the sense it presents. We just need to find the sense it presents.